In 1938, Adolf Hitler stood before a crowd of Nazi officials and christened a car he called the Strength Through Joy Wagon. A factory was built to produce it. Over 336,000 German citizens dutifully paid into a government savings plan 5 Reichsmarks a week for the chance to own one. Not a single civilian ever received a car. The factory instead produced military vehicles and V-1 flying bombs. Concentration camp inmates made up 60% of the workforce. By the time the war ended, the plant that was supposed to deliver affordable transportation to ordinary German families had become a sub-camp of the Neuengamme concentration camp. And yet, that factory and the car it was designed to build went on to become the best-selling single-platform automobile in human history. 21.5 million units, 65 years of continuous production, a symbol of peace, freedom, and joyful rebellion in the very countries that bombed it into rubble. How does that happen? How does a machine conceived by a dictator, assembled by slave labor, and rejected as worthless by every major automaker on Earth, become the most beloved car the world has ever known? The answer begins in the wreckage of a German factory town in the summer of 1945, with a 29-year-old British soldier who was ordered to tear the whole thing down. The idea itself was not evil. A car affordable enough for every working family in Germany to own. In 1934, Hitler summoned Ferdinand Porsche and outlined what he wanted. The car would seat 2 adults and 3 children. It would have an air-cooled engine. It would cost 990 Reichsmarks, roughly a third of the cheapest car on the German market. Porsche delivered. By 1938, prototypes had completed over 2 million kilometers of testing. On May 26th of that year, Hitler laid the cornerstone for a massive factory near Fallersleben. The plant was designed to produce 1.5 million cars annually, but the program was never viable. A Volkswagen at 990 Reichsmarks was still far beyond what an average worker could afford outright. That is why the government created the Savings Plan. Over 300 to 36,000 people signed up. They made their weekly payments. They waited. Then the war began. In September 1939, civilian production stopped. Only 630 cars had been assembled. The factory pivoted to building Kebelwagen, military vehicles and V-1 components, and the workforce that built them was not the one Hitler described in his speeches about the German working family. According to the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, forced laborers eventually comprised approximately 60% of the factory's workforce. The plant operated concentration camps directly on its grounds. In 1944, a Volkswagen engineer traveled to Auschwitz and personally selected 300 skilled metalworkers from transports of Hungarian Jews. The People's Car was never built for the people. It was a propaganda instrument that became a weapons factory. When the war ended, every major car company in the industrialized world was offered the factory and everything in it for free. They all said no. When the Americans captured the Wolfsburg plant in April 1945, they showed no interest and handed it to the British. The British sent Major Ivan Hurst, a 29-year-old engineer from Yorkshire, to dismantle the production line and ship the machinery out as reparations. Hurst found something unexpected. Much of the factory's heavy equipment had survived the bombing, some of it deliberately concealed under rubble. He discovered a surviving pre-war Volkswagen, got it running, and drove it to British military headquarters. The Rhine Army ordered 20,000 vehicles. By December 1945, the first post-war Beetle rolled off the line. Meanwhile, the car was being offered to established automakers around the world. Ford's chairman, Ernest Breech, visited and concluded the operation was not worth a dime. Sir William Rootes of Britain called the car too ugly and too noisy, and predicted the venture would fail within 2 years. The Americans, the French, and the Australians all passed. In January 1948, Heinrich Nordhoff, a German engineer with experience at Opel under General Motors, was appointed managing director. In his first year, he doubled production to to over 19,000 cars. Within 6 years, he reduced the man-hours per vehicle from 400 to 100. By 1955, Volkswagen was selling more cars abroad than at home. By 1961, annual production exceeded 1 million vehicles. Nobody redesigned the car. Nobody changed the engine or reshaped the body. They refined the manufacturing. They built a service network. They believed in a product everyone else had dismissed as worthless. Every automaker that had turned down the factory for free watched it become the fourth largest car company on the planet. But even Nordhoff understood that production alone would not crack the most important market in the world. Selling the Beetle in late 1950s, America should have been impossible. The country was obsessed with chrome, horsepower, and tail fins. The Beetle carried a burden no engineering could erase. To the public, this was Hitler's car. In 1958, Volkswagen sold roughly 55,000 Beetles in the United States. Then Carl Hahn, head of Volkswagen of America, hired a small New York agency called Doyle, Dane, Bernbach. What DDB did was something no major car advertiser had attempted. They told the truth. The Beetle was small, ugly, cheap, and slow. They said so on a stark white page with a tiny photograph and a 2-word headline. Think small. In an era when every car ad screamed about size, power, and status, DDB presented the Beetle as the intelligent alternative. One ad showed a Beetle under the word lemon, then explained that the car had been rejected by a Volkswagen inspector over a blemished chrome strip on the glove compartment. The message was unmistakable. The company cared about quality so deeply that it would reject a car for a scratch you would never notice. If you want to hear more stories about the engineering and culture behind the cars we drive, subscribe now. We cover these every week. The campaign connected with an audience that did not yet know it existed. By the mid-1960s, annual sales surpassed 150,000. In 1968, they hit 563,000 units, roughly 40% of Volkswagen's global output. That same year, Disney released The Love Bug, a film starring a sentient beetle named Herbie, and the car's cultural transformation was complete. The counterculture claimed it. Hippies painted flowers on its body and drove it to communes. College students bought it because it was cheap and honest, and utterly unconcerned with impressing anyone. A car born inside the Nazi propaganda machine had become the most recognizable symbol of American anti-establishment freedom. In 1972, the Beetle surpassed the Ford Model T as the best-selling car in history. Imagine explaining that to the man whose company had been offered the entire Volkswagen operation for nothing and walked away. Every expert who looked at the Beetle in 1945 saw a relic. They saw a bombed factory, a Nazi pedigree, an ugly shape, and an engine in the wrong place. They saw everything the car had been. Ivan Hurst saw what it could become. Nordhoff built the systems to prove it. And a small agency in New York found the words to make a country fall in love with it by doing the one thing nobody in the industry had tried. They stopped pretending and started telling the truth. 336,000 Germans paid for a car they never received. 21.5 million people around the world eventually did. The difference between those two numbers is not engineering. It is the distance between a promise made to control people and a product built to serve them. If you want to see how another car company used a completely different strategy to dominate American roads and why Detroit still has not recovered, that story is next. The most dangerous judgment you can make about anything, a car, a company, a person, is the one based entirely on where it came from instead of where it is going.